Okay, so we have a quadratic equation. It's in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. But this time a is not 1. A is not 1. Okay, so we divide everything by a. Just divide each of them by a. Okay. You're dividing, well, it is a, but a is 9, so it looks like I had drew 4 little a's there, but they're really 9s because, oh well, a is 9 this time. Sorry about that. Okay, so the 9's cancel there, and I have x squared minus, now I'm going to go ahead and reduce my fraction, 2/3 x, because 3 goes into both 6 and 9, minus 4 over 9 equals 0. Okay, now at least the leading coefficient, or a, is 1, and we're allowed to divide both sides by 9. We can divide by whatever we want as long as it's not 0, so we're okay. And I'm going to move this constant over to the other side. Okay, now I'm going to find that magic number that has to be added to both sides to complete the square. That is the completing the square. Okay, so how do I find that? Well, I take negative 2/3 and I divide it by 2. We talked about that being multiplying by 1/2, and I square it. Okay, so dividing by 2 is the same as multiplying by 1/2. Well, I get to cancel those 2's, right? So I get negative 1/3 squared, which is 1/9. Okay, that is the magic number then. I'm going to put in a 1/9 here, and I'm going to put a 1/9 here. That's what I'm adding to both sides. You don't have to draw the blanks if you don't want to, if that's throwing you. Okay, now the left-hand side, we have made this into a perfect square trinomial. That's what we were doing when we completed the square. With that whole dividing by 2 and squaring it was to find the number that would do that. So how does it factor? It factors into x, and then it goes by that number before you squared it, minus 1/3, that binomial squared. That's the left-hand side. The right-hand side, well, look, I have common denominators. I can just add those. So 5/9. Great. Now I'm going to finish by taking the square root of both sides. I'm going to use the square root property. Okay. So square root of both sides. Don't forget the plus or minus. Okay. So x minus 1/3. That's what we get on the left. The square root and the square, they get rid of each other. And then what's going to happen over here on the right? I'm going to have plus or minus the square root of 5. But I can take the square root of 9. That's 3. So I can write it like that. And we're almost done. Okay, I just have to move the 1/3 over into that spot right there. So it's going to be x equals 1/3. It'll now be positive, plus or minus the square root of 5 over 3. Because they are common denominators, and this is not an imaginary number, I would write my answer x equals 1 plus or minus the square root of 5 over 3, like that. If you want to write them separately, it'd be 1 minus the square root of 5 over 3, and 1 plus the square root of 5 over 3. Those are real numbers. You can put them in a calculator and get a decimal approximation. Okay? So that one was a little bit involved. That was a little bit tricky, but it was a nice setup for what we're going to do next. Okay? So that is completing the square. Solved by completing the square, our third method.